Agents often find themselves perplexed when it comes to navigating the intricacies of completing sections related to purchase contracts and lease agreements in the agency segment. Consider a scenario where you're hosting an open house for a property you've listed, and your broker has explicitly advised against assuming the role of a dual agent if you end up selling the property. Now, imagine a potential buyer entering the premises and expressing a desire to purchase the house. In the subsequent discussion, you clarify your representation of the seller, and the buyers are amenable to this arrangement. Subsequently, you proceed to handle the necessary documentation. Initially, you introduce the read form to the buyers, emphasizing that your representation is solely on behalf of the seller. They acknowledge this by checking the seller box in the buyer's election section and affix their signatures and dates on the form. You should also have the buyers understand and sign and date the unrepresented buyer disclosure. Moving forward, you present a copy of the purchase contract, initiating the process of filling in the pertinent details. Upon reaching page 10, you encounter section 8R, titled Broker on Behalf of Buyer. Given that you've already informed the buyer of your exclusive representation of the seller, a question arises. Should you leave section 8R blank? The answer is contingent on your broker's preferences, but conventional wisdom suggests completing the lines in 8R, considering that section 8 provides a checkbox for seller only. It's essential to note that the title doesn't explicitly state representation of the buyer, but rather indicates that you are the broker acting on behalf of the buyer. This distinction is crucial. As the buyer lacks representation, checking the seller-only box in section 8 is advisable. Leaving it blank may lead to confusion for anyone reviewing the contract, as they might assume an incomplete section implies the involvement of another broker. This recommendation extends to the residential lease, vacant land, and commercial contracts. Take a look at the form here. Line 450 is where you would check seller if the buyer is unrepresented. Make sure also that you have the read form filled out where you represent the seller only in the buyer election box. Ask your broker how they want this completed. They may want you to fill in lines 458, 462 with unrepresented buyer, and as stated prior, have an unrepresented buyer disclosure filled out and signed and dated by the buyers. We will present various scenarios and request you to choose the response that most accurately outlines the appropriate steps for disclosing agency information in your agency. You've been assisting a buyer for several weeks, and initially, she completed the REAID form, checking both boxes for buyer representation and dual agency. Now, you've found a suitable for sale by owner, FSBO property. Don't forget the BBA. The correct procedure would be, initially, contact the seller, inform him you will solely represent the buyer, and inquire if he is willing to compensate you. If he agrees, have him sign a form recognizing your exclusive representation of the buyer and the agreed-upon compensation. Subsequently, show the property to your buyer. If she expresses interest, proceed to write the contract, noting the buyer's representation, without referencing the commission. The appropriate form for compensation and agency disclosure is either provided by your broker or the AAR Unrepresented Seller Compensation Agreement form. This form clearly states your representation of the buyer to the seller. Begin by approaching the seller and confirming willingness to compensate, obtaining a signed form before showing the property. Here is another scenario. Several months ago, you listed a property and had the seller sign the REAID form indicating seller representation or dual representation. A potential buyer expressed interest after seeing your sign, and you showed them the property. The buyers loved it and planned to return the next day with family. It was only at the contract writing stage in your office that you realized you hadn't discussed agency with the buyer. Reflecting on the situation, the best course of action would have been to address agency at the right time in the process. Which do you think is the best time? 1. When the buyers called on the phone, you should have discussed it then and sent them an agency addendum, getting it signed before you met them. 2. At the curb, when you met them, you should have handed the form to them and asked them to sign it. 3. After showing them the house, and after they said they liked it and wanted to come back with family, You should have sat them down, showed them the form, explained the types of agency, and had them sign, electing at least seller only and dual agency. 4. After you write up the offer, it is okay to discuss agency with them now and get them to sign the form with the appropriate disclosure elected. The optimal approach is option 3. After showing the house and before the buyers express their intent to purchase, sit them down, present the READ form, explain the types of agency, and have them sign, choosing either seller only or dual agency. Timing is crucial, as discussing agency when they seek your services ensures they elect the type of agency and sign the form. Option 1 is likely too early since no client relationship has been established, and the buyers haven't formally sought your services. Option 2, handing them the form at the curb, might be premature and not the ideal moment for a detailed discussion about agency. Option 4 is too late, as you have already established a relationship when they asked for your services. So, by the time the contract is being written, it's too late to address agency properly, and you may find yourself working as an implied agent or an undisclosed dual agent. Consider the question, are they asking me to work with them? If the answer is yes, take the opportunity to explain the form, have them elect, sign, and date it. You will be sure of a commission then and who you are working for and with. What is the purpose of agency disclosure? The purpose of the agency disclosure form is to protect the client. Upon signing, there is no contractual obligation to exclusively work with that agent. However, this document does make sure that everyone who hires a real estate agent understands the full scope of their relationship dynamic. It is also to prevent implied agency. If you understand what your responsibilities are for your client or customer, it is easier to explain agency to the buyer or seller or unrepresented customer.